No Way Out is a 1987 sort of neo new noir film starring Kevin Costner, Gene Hackman, Sean Young, and just a couple other actors I just always enjoyed. And it's a little thriller movie that was suggested by Scott Westbrook, and I hadn't really gotten to it. So I really wanted to kind of go back. And the best part about the movie is it really had stuck with me that even though I haven't watched this film in a very, very long time, I remembered sort of like the twists and turns of it all. So I knew what was coming. But at the end of the day, I don't want to spoil any of that for you. I will talk about it after a little spoiler warning. But for the most part, it's an 80s sort of dated feel with some of the music and some of the generalities. But overall, the film holds up really well. It's adaptation from a novel called The Big Clock. So it's been adapted a couple of times. This is one of the more recent ones. And the film centers around a naval lieutenant commander, played by Costner, Tom Farrell, who ends up having this spontaneous affair and relationship with this girl named Susan that he meets at one of their big events. Turns out she's also sleeping with the Secretary of Defense. And, it's kind of like a fall in love little romance. There's all sorts of talks about, Russian subs and spies and espionage type stuff. Typical Cold War stuff. Nothing that really feels intrusive. Then Gene Hackman's character, Bryce, gets into sort of like a little scuff with the girl because, it finds out that, she's sleeping with somebody else and he gets all weird and then she accidentally dies. And then the film centers around this big cover up and this pinning on this mysterious person that she was also seeing, which actually is Costner's character. And he sort of trapped into this head of investigation, looking into this, trying to balance the CIA and local authorities and Army CID officers searching and run their investigation. And all of that works really well to create this constant state of tension. The walls are closing around Costner's character, and what will he do? Can he get through it? What does it look like on the other side? And does Hackman's Bryce actually get his? Is there any sort of like justice for this girl who's kind of caught up in just sort of like this, I don't know, horrible situation for the most part? Or we get a young and dapper Costner. He's on the move. Here he is in his whites going. He meets this girl, Sean Young. They don't waste any time in the back of the old limo and really is sort of an intense, sort of like a stereotype of that 80s. I don't know. Is this what DC's like? I mean, wow. She's definitely kind of a slut. Like it really wouldn't have been far fetched for them to basically just say she's a girl of the street because she's that open, if you will. But the story kind of works fast because they really kind of go from that into sort of like an actual little love affair before you find out, of course, she is also sleeping with Hackman. Now, the investigation kind of goes a little slow at times. Here's Fred Thompson. He's one of the players. There's a lot of different characters that have really good roles in this movie. I'm just really impressed by sort of like the nature of how good the performances are. Will Patton plays one of the, key, sort of like the slimy guy that's there as Bryce's aide to help cover everything up and then manipulate the investigation that Farrell's supposed to be conducting. And there's just a lot of this tension that's surrounding like their past and what actually they'd gone through in such a short amount of time. And, what are they going to do? How is it going to not be pinned on him? Because he is the other guy in this equation. He is the guy in the room. He's the guy on this little piece of evidence, and the clock is always ticking. There is some chase scenes and some action in some ways. I don't think there's anything really um, as intense as maybe even the trailer was trying to play up, but it's not necessarily bad either. I think it just works for its time. It works for the film that it is and was in the late '80s. But if you're looking for like an action thriller, this isn't it. This is not like Mission Impossible or anything like that. It's not a Bourne movie or anything like this. Is literally a dramatic thriller. Again, that's sort of like they redefined the noir stuff during the '80s, right? They did this sort of like new approach to things, and it feels very much like that. One thing I do like is the reality of the time. So this guy is the computer guy that's a friend of his. Like he's there doing this investigation. He kind of runs into this friend of his who is uh, the doctor that kind of runs the facility there. He's going to be the guy that's going to be working on some of the tech and that kind of thing, and hacks into the different systems, and he can do all that. So I will say all of this was really good and really had a great sense of feeling like it really is how things operate or operated, especially during that Cold War era. A lot of people were really into Sean Young in that era. Obviously, she was huge because of the role that she had in Blade Runner several years before this. She's been in a lot of big movies, like Stripes was a huge one for her, even earlier in the decade. But from Dune to Wall Street to Fatal Instinct or Ace Ventura, Sean Young's had a long resume of films that people really do enjoy. And this is like one of those that probably doesn't get a lot of credit, but I think if you see it, you might not forget it, if you will. Hackman's role is actually kind of subdued. It actually is not as dynamic as what you might think of him as many of his other roles. It's kind of got a just a very political caricature of a character, slimy, trying to justify his affair early on, but then he just kind of wants to fall on the knife, and his little toady, Will Patton's character Pritchard, doesn't let him. It's kind of like the juxtaposition of the situation from the stereotype, but at the same time, he's a slimy dude, and you're always wondering how he'll get away with it because at the end of the movie, when there is that twist, he's got a twist on the twist, if you will. So with that, let me segue into the twist a little bit. The spoiler. So all I can tell you is No Way Out. It really is very solid, especially if you've never seen it. Don't watch the trailer. Don't get in deep into it because you don't want anything more spoiled for you, anything like that. But this is a very solid film. It's like a 3.5 to 4 out of 5, depending on where you are with this sort of genre and the era in which it's made, because it is somewhat dated in sort of the way it's filmed. There's these two musical, I say montages, but it's them driving and stuff. The music is just, it was cringy then, folks. I'm sorry. It's cringier now. So it's a little rough. It's not like it takes you out of the movie. It's just, it's dated, right? It's like when I talked about Serpico. It's like if you don't like music and the stuff that how they made films of the 70s, this would be a film I could see some people coming away with not enjoying as much, but you're really selling yourself short because I think this is a really, really solid film. All right, with all of that said, the big twists, the big turns, and everything is always about Costner's character. And it is kind of fun that he actually played this role very early on, like right around the breakout, right? So he's not quite this giant A-list celebrity yet. This is that year where it's sort of kind of started coming into light. It's sort of happening with the Untouchables, Elliot Ness roles, but after this, of course, it just keeps going, right? He stacks Bull Durham on top of with Field of Dreams, JFK, Robin Hood, and Bodyguard. So over this sort of span of about 5 years, he basically was just unstoppable. But this film is the one that kind of everybody forgets. And reality is, he is the Russian spy that they kind of try to, the mysterious Russian spy that doesn't even exist, that they know exists, but they don't know where he is. He really is the guy. And they deliver that news to you in such a quick and abrupt way. It stuck with me so much. I knew that was the twist. It was kind of remarkable that I would remember that because there's so many times I'll watch a movie and I don't remember hardly any of the details. But this is, I think of the movie and all I think about is the twist. It's so good and well executed in sort of like a jarring fashion, and then also just kind of like not a buttoned up clean ending. It's like he's told to go back to the Soviet Union, and he's kind of like, well, not going to work out like that. So what was funny about Gene Hackman's character is so slimy that even when Will Patton kind of like falls on the knife at the end, he like totally snaps. There's just this weird comments made along the way that he's really gay, and you're like, does he really kind of have like a little bit of a crush on Bryce maybe? But suddenly there's this whole thing when he takes care of himself and deletes himself and all gets pinned on him, and you're like, what is going on? This movie just, it twists and turns and whatever. And of course there's a quick little scene, quick little moment where Farrell's sending stuff over to the CIA, so he's going to get Bryce either way. So really great ending, very solid film, and in a film that if you've never seen, I think you really would have enjoyed. But because of that, I will say I don't know. It is it so its rewatchability is very solid, but I wouldn't say it's a film I'd be seeking out regularly. So for me, that 3.5 is I think a very fair score. A 7 out of 10, maybe a 7.5 out of 10. I think edging towards, but maybe not quite an 8. It's just it's just a dated movie, and I don't think there's a ton of action. I think could have been juiced up just a little bit more, but that's not what this film was about. This film is about kind of having sort of Cold War thriller, espionage, noir, crime type stuff all blended together, and it's done really really well. So let me know what you guys think. Have you guys seen No Way Out? Is it on your radar screen? Love to hear your thoughts. I think it's just everything about it is done really pretty well. So that's my take on it. Love to hear from you. And again, thanks to Scott Westbrook for the recommendation. Talk to you all soon. I am Pops.